Hello everyone, welcome to the DeFi Dojo. Today is April 6th. It's the first week of the month, and this is the weekly outlook by Banzai Trading. I try to do a weekly outlook once a week in the Discord, and if you are a member, you get to watch this live and then ask me questions afterwards. Or you can just watch it on YouTube. I've been calling for the top of the market for a couple months now. I was fully out as of early February, and I'm really glad that I was. However, just because I was right doesn't mean I'm like really happy. Sure, I've made money on shorting the market. I've definitely saved a lot of money because I took profits at the top again, and that's all great for me. But meanwhile, the rest of the world is suffering, and so I just wanted to make a point this week to just be careful with how you word things with people, and we don't want to try to be like, oh, I was right and you were wrong or anything like that. I mean, there's going to be a lot of emotions with this, and just remember that even if you were fortunate enough to take profits at the top, like a lot of people are hurting and don't know the things that we know in here. So maybe help them, instead of bragging or gloating or whatever you want to call it. Maybe point them in the direction of something that could help them. Maybe see if they want to join the server. Maybe see if they want to join somewhere else, or pass along some educational material to them that can help them see things clearly, even if it's not from here. And just be kind, just don't be a jerk about it. Anyway, let's get into it. So we saw the bearish divergence last cycle here, and that is where the markets are moving up, even though the momentum indicators here are moving down. And that typically will mark a top, and then we saw the bottom here when we were seeing markets moving down while our momentum indicators were trending up. That marked the bottom, and then now we saw the top here where we had the same thing. Momentum indicators are trending down while our price is moving up. We also hit the first take profit fib at the 1.272. I thought we might see higher, but I took my profits at the 103 mark anyway. And then I waited to see if we could close the candle above it on the higher time frame, which is the weekly. And it never did, and so I haven't been getting back in since then. I did just buy a little bit of Ethereum, not a whole lot, but because I do think that we could see the lower levels of this. But I did, get a little bit here. And then if we look at the gap, that's kind of where we're bouncing right now. There's a gap on Ethereum in between 1430 and 1530. And if you go to the daily, that's where you'll see that. And it stretches from all the way back to the week or day of March 23rd, or no, March 10th of 2023. So that's like 2 years ago that gap was created. And now we are on the verge of filling that gap. So it would not surprise me to see Ethereum fall back into this gap at 1430, at which point I will snag just a little bit more. And then the stop loss here is like, I got to go to the spot chart for that. The stop loss is the 786. So that's a really, really wide range. So that's why I'm not really buying a whole lot here. I would much rather buy towards the bottom of the golden pocket around 1370. And then if we do see the 786 at 1223, I'll buy a little bit more there. And then if we close a weekly candle below that 786, that's going to be my cue to just take the loss. I'm not going heavy. This is the bear market. I don't go heavily buying things in bear markets until I at least see some sort of bottom forming. And that's just the way that I do it. I don't buy falling knives typically unless they fall into this zone. And this zone just gives us a high probability of some sort of bounce. And it could take weeks for that bounce to materialize. It could just knife straight through for all we know. It's an unprecedented amount of selling that we've seen in equities markets. I don't know if I've ever seen anything that fast. COVID was certainly close, but I feel like this is happening faster. So just be careful. The markets are bearish. I don't buy falling knives. I don't recommend buying falling knives. However, if we go look at equities markets, we are hitting the all-time trend line here. Now, it has peaked below before during COVID, right? So that means it could potentially go below again. Now, there's another reason to think that maybe we could break this all-time trend line, and it's not even all-time. This is from 2008. I keep calling it the all-time trend line because it feels like it's been forever, right? But if we pay attention to the housing market cycles, like I've been speaking about for over a year now, every 18 years we get some sort of market fall. It's just the cycle of how things work. Every 18 years, the housing market goes through a bit of a reset, and sometimes that reset is very minor, and sometimes that reset is very major, i.e. the 2008 housing market. So we are now approaching that mark. We could see significant downside from here for an extended period of time. We also could not see something major and it just minor. I don't know. I can't predict that. What I do know is that the market right now is very bearish, and until it shows me something to be bullish about, I am just going to maintain my bearish status. Now we are hitting the below 30 on the RSI on the weekly, and it bounces when that happens historically. So we could see a bounce here, but that doesn't mean it's like that's the bottom and we're going to head to new highs. We could very well see a lot of choppiness around in this area, and then maybe it does break. We'll have to take it week by week to see what happens. I do think I can scalp some longs this week if we do start seeing a bounce here. I'm already probably down on the one SPY or the two SPY calls that I have that were short term to maybe anticipate a bounce, and it was kind of a flyer to see if that would happen. I wasn't like amazingly confident in it. It was a bit of a gamble. I'm probably going to lose on that gamble. And that's okay. I feel pretty good about saving the majority of the money that I had in the market by selling over the last 6 months, and I can't complain. Looking at the NASDAQ, they all look very similar. NASDAQ, ES, and the Dow Jones, they are all approaching their, this is 18-year trend line. So, but if we consider the fact that the last housing market cycle broke its trend, right, like it had this long-term trend here, not super long compared to what we have today, but it broke it significantly, right? And so we could have ourselves potentially one of these decade-long sideways markets. We can't rule that out. If this trend breaks, then that very well may be what we have, because when major trends break, it needs time to find a bottom, consolidate sideways, go through a reaccumulation, and then at that point it can finally decide to go back up and start another strong uptrend. And since every 18 years that's typically what happens, it wouldn't surprise me if we broke down through this trend line, went lower, found some sort of support somewhere else. At that point I would be measuring from here, and if we just measure from there the entire 18 years, the 236 is all the way down here at 13 or 36.53, and that's significant compared to what we've already experienced. So can't rule it out. You can see that was support, so it all makes sense mathematically. The NASDAQ, if we take that, its 236 is down here near 10,000, and if we take the Dow Jones and measure its entire 18-year bull run, its 236 is all the way down here at 285, and this is the ETF, not the actual the industrial average index. So just be careful out there. I am not buying anything other than that little bit of Ethereum so far. I don't really know where this will find bottom eventually. I'm just trying to get a quick bounce. And if I do finally start seeing that bounce, my take profit target's likely going to be 1900, or this 8 EMA might roll down in that zone over the next couple weeks. So it's not something that I plan on selling immediately for take profits. It's something I plan on holding for a few weeks for some more DCAing down below. And then, unless of course this just shoots straight down here and closes this week below the 786, then I'm out. So that's my plan. I'm not buying anything else. A lot of people have been asking me like, well, what about AVAX, or what about Link, or what about these other tokens? I'm not trying to like fill my portfolio with a bunch of tokens. I'm just gonna try ETH, and that's it. If we look at ETH Bitcoin, this is a great teaching moment too, because if you've taken my sessions, you've known where the pattern that I've shown you, where if you fall into a golden pocket and then return, it's likely going to go lower. Or if we invert this and we are bouncing up into a golden pocket, fall back to below, and then get ourselves back into a golden pocket, once we start seeing support forming in here, then we can increase our probabilities of getting into the greed FOMO zone and making new highs. Well, it's the same thing inversely. Once you get into a golden pocket, fail to make a new high, which it didn't get above here, and then fall back down into it again, we'll start seeing resistance forming in here before it eventually falls down into what this is called the panic and fear zone, and then it goes and sees new lows. So according to my analysis and the way that I read things, this chart is dead. It also resembles a very large, what we call an Adam and Eve pattern, which is a point followed by a rounded top that makes a lower high, and that's exactly what this is. So according to that, this is very likely going to just continue heading lower and lower and lower, and it may just be marking the end of Ethereum as we know it. It makes sense, fundamentally speaking, as well. We don't really need it. It's expensive, it's slow. There's much faster and better things out there that are cheaper, even though they're not being used either. So, it may just be like we have a Yahoo got decimated by Google type scenario, right? Yahoo was the big thing in the early 2000s, and then Google and Microsoft kind of took over, and now we don't really use Yahoo anymore. So that may be what's happening with Ethereum, fundamentally anyway. If we look at Bitcoin, again, I think we can see 69,000 relatively easily. We have now a weekly bearish cross. We already got the bearish retest after the cross, which happened last week, and now we're starting out here, and it wouldn't surprise me to see 69K, maybe even as early as this week. If that breaks, then the next one is 51, 52K, and that would hit the major trend line, and that trend line goes all the way back to the COVID crash, right? So that'll be a significant area, and we'll have to see what happens once we get there. Likely get some sort of bounce at the very least, and then we'll have to see what happens if we break it down below. We've never experienced Bitcoin in a bear market world. It was established and created in 2010, and as I've been pointing out, all of these charts started their bull cycle back in 2008, 2009. So Bitcoin's never experienced a market like this, right? And if that's the kind of market we may potentially be heading into, where it breaks this trend and we start falling lower, what happens to Bitcoin? I don't know. We have continued to see regression with it. Its highs in the bull market the last two cycles have gone lower than the fib retracements. For example, if you measure this bear market here, actually let's go back to this one. If you measure this bear market here, this topped at the 2.272 fib. If you measure this one topped at the 1.618 fib, one fib lower. And now if we measure this cycle, it topped at the 1.272, which is 2 fibs lower. So we are seeing a regression in the highs as well as a regression in the lows. This cycle here bottomed at the 236. This cycle bottomed at the 382, and this cycle bottomed at the 0.5. So if that's the case, then we can expect this cycle to bottom somewhere around the 618, somewhere around 32, 33,000. That's where I would consider buying Bitcoin again. So I hope this has helped. If you have any chart requests, I'd be happy to take them, and maybe we can chart some shorts. And I just think that we've gone so far down right now that shorts are going to be like, we should be taking profits, which I've already done on Litecoin. I'm still in the Solana short, although it did hit TP number 1, so we're just waiting to see if we can get lower on that. And yeah, I think that's all I got so far. And then I'll just be waiting for some more retests of 8 EMAs as they bounce to continue trying to short this market into what I think is going to be oblivion. All right. Any questions, comments, chart requests? I know it's not fun. I know. But we can still make money in bear markets, and that's what I plan on doing, as well as saving ourselves all of the drawdown that comes with them. We have a question. So do you see a 0% chance of going back up? At this point in time, I see a 0% chance of making new highs. Okay, I'm not going to say 0. I give it a 2% chance of seeing new highs this cycle. And that's really only because Bitcoin's still technically in an uptrend. But, you know, if you went from here. So if you went on our bull cycle so far, like that right there could be considered the trend. Minus those candles that fell below here. But we have our bottoms here, and you can see we're pretty much on it right now. And we could get a little bit of a bounce from that, but it already did try last week, so now we're attempting it again this week. And every time something hits a resistance or a support, bounces a little bit, but then doesn't really do anything substantial, and then comes back to retest it again like it is right now, you have higher probability of seeing that break. So then if I actually take the trend from those candles, I only get 2 points, which is the bottom point and that point. Then, there's still a ways to go to even hit that. And Bitcoin has been holding up way better than equities markets and a lot of other things. So that is something to be said. However, I don't know how it will withstand in a long-term bear market, if that's what we're heading into. And it's really too early to say if we're going into a long-term bear market right now, but just according to everything that I've been researching over the years, it's seeming probable, right? Like with the way that equities have moved down so fast just to get back to this main trend line, how fast it got here, it's substantial. So markets are panicking, and when markets panic, irrational things happen, and the market can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent, and that's a famous quote. So that's true in all circumstances, whether it's bearish or bullish. And I can't say that this is a good place to buy until I see some sort of support forming. Now, if we would have just gradually over the years trended down there like normal bear markets, like the 2022 one, yeah, that makes more sense to be okay, let's just start accumulating down here. But there's literally no time to accumulate this dip. So I don't know if we'll get a COVID type recovery like we did back here, but maybe we will. I don't know. We got to see. We got to see where it stops, and then how Bitcoin fares in the process of all of that will be something to be monitored for sure. I hope that helps. What level would Bitcoin have to break for the bull to be done, technically speaking? It would have to break, I would say, that red line, because it's never had a bull market break the trend and then continue higher. Even when it broke this trend, it made a bottom and tried to go higher, but still failed. So it wouldn't surprise me to see this come all the way back down to this neckline here at the 236 around 69K. Give us a bounce, maybe another little run up, a lower high, fall below there, a bounce here, and then start going into the actual downtrend. So everything has to distribute, and right now we have 1, 2, 3, and then so what we're waiting for is the fourth and fifth humps in the distribution. And here you can see we had 1, 2, the third one was the highest, right? 3, 4, and then 5, and then into the bear market. And so typically the third or the fourth is the highest hump in that distribution, and so that very well may be what we have here. If it does want to go make one more higher, I would need to see a move over these EMAs. So that gives us very little room for error on that call, right? So if I see a candle just blast right back up and close over those EMAs, sure, I'll hop right back in. And I've been saying that for weeks, and we haven't seen it happen, so I'm just still sitting out. But if it does do that, then great. Then we can say, all right, we're turning around. But meanwhile, this looks not good. So when buying Bitcoin starts to become interesting, it might be next year, mid next year, if the cycle is going to repeat, and that's still pretty far away. So until I see what happens during that time, it's too early to say. But you can't really call that until you start seeing things like this down here. And right now we're still here, right? So see where that EMA crossed bearish, retested, and then it made this relief bounce, but it never quite materialized into crossing the EMAs. That could be what we get here. This will come down lower, try to make a relief bounce, end up rejecting, not crossing them bullish, and then break down again. So while we could see a good relief rally, I don't think it's going to turn into new highs. Nike for a chart request. Yeah, let's look at Nike. I do still hold Nike. I do like it, like, long term. And it's really the only things I really have long term anymore are those value companies. But I'm pretty sure I'm down on this. But again, it's a long term bet. And let's see. So, do I have any like major trends here? It's a pretty significant retracement. Yeah, I mean it can come down. It can come down as low as 38. So that would probably be where I would buy again. And like I said, once these major trends break, it needs to come down, find a bottom, go sideways for a while. So if I'm buying Nike, it's because I'm considering it for a 5-year hold minimum, right? It's not something I'm trying to just trade short term. On the monthly, it's about to get close to the oversold mark here. So it may not have too much further down to go. It's a solid company. I feel a lot more comfortable holding something like Nike for a long time than I do any sort of crypto or lower market cap stock that's supposedly supposed to be growth of some sort. So I hope that helps. And let me see if we just move this up to this level. So yeah, it broke below that 236. So it's looking likely. Like, did it actually close below that? Yeah, it did. So we got the close below here. So we could see 41 to 38, somewhere in this vicinity here for a long-term bottom on Nike. You see the weekly's not oversold yet either. So I think it's probably still got more downside. What do you think of DCAing into TQQQ as a long-ish term strategy, 2 to 5 year horizon? Also, what would make you change your stance and become bullish again? Would it have to be a change in the macro, or could TA give you that call? The TA would give me that call. It always does. I don't really pay too much attention to the news and the fundamentals of things. In my opinion, the charts tell me before all of that stuff actually happens. And it did again this cycle. I was able to see it well before even before Trump was elected. I could see it. And there's evidence of that in the channels. You can see me been calling this for years now. So yeah, I would need to see some sort of technical bottom, and I'm sure I will when it comes. I can't tell you what it looks like now because we aren't there, and so you just got to stick around and wait for things to materialize, and then we'll see what happens. In order to be bullish again, we need to get back over the weekly EMAs minimum. And if we look at the S&P on the weekly, we're not even anywhere in the vicinity of the EMAs right now. So we just now got the bearish cross. Here's your retest, and then there's your capitulation. And so that's where Bitcoin can start doing the same thing if it's following, right? So we just now got the cross and the retest, but we haven't seen the capitulation yet. So that capitulation could happen this week and just totally nuke everything down to that red trend line, 69K, somewhere in this area. If we put the pivots on, you can see we just closed below the weekly pivot for the first time last week. That's not good. Everything is bearish now. Literally everything. There is not a good technical sign in any market that I look at anywhere. Now, actually, that reminds me. Let's look at this. So someone brought this up in the chat, and I forgot who it was, but thank you for showing it to me. But SVOL is interesting here. Now, I'm not saying that we want to just go balls to the wall buying this thing, but I'm going to buy a little bit. It has currently a 20% dividend, and this tracks volatility. And we all know that things get volatile, and then the volatility subsides for a while, right, before things get volatile again. So since the markets are absolutely puking again in futures markets right now, this might end up being lower than where it is now when markets open tomorrow. But I plan on buying some of this because it has currently at this price a 20% dividend. It pays every month 27 cents. And when volatility subsides, this chart should start going back up. And so I feel like that's a really good non-risky bet. And it's not something I plan on holding for a long time, but I think it could be good for a few months, right? So I'm going to buy a little bit when market opens of SVOL and try to take this back up a little bit as as it subsides with the volatility, and it will eventually start kind of slowing down and going sideways or slightly down still. But as long as the volatility goes down, this chart should bounce. What's a good oil stock to keep an eye on, if any? Yeah, listen to Zach on those things. Natural gas is much better. Oil is structurally damaged. Adjusted for inflation, it has performed terribly. And then he mentioned Cheniere Energy. Let's look that up. Cheniere. Okay. Well, that's a pretty bad weekly candle, but everything is, so it's no surprise. I mean, when it tanks, it tanks. This is what it did back in 2008. So, again, I'd be careful with that too, because that's what happened last time the market collapsed. So, that's a pretty hefty move. I'm pretty scared of everything at the moment, just so we're clear. Like, I don't really trust anything when it comes to buying something at the moment. Even though we're at those major trend lines on the S&P and the NASDAQ, I don't trust it because of the part of the cycle that we're in. So I really hope that this can help people save money and not just start buying things because they're down 20%. I mean, the S&P is down 20% in like less than 3 months. So when it gets that fast, it's not something I just want to buy just because it's down 20%. I want to wait and see if it actually finds a bottom. Right now, there's no bottom. Right now, we're still falling. We're down almost 4% just to open the futures market today. So that would be the third day in a row now that we would be down 4% if it does end up closing there tomorrow, which is just insane. And then we got Zach saying VIX above 50 is a gift. That requires around 5% daily move. Do you still hold any long-term SPY? Yeah, I mean, like I said in my weekly analysis, I don't ever want anyone to take my analysis of the market and have that influence their 401ks, long-term investments. Like, those are meant for long-term investments. Please don't go dumping your freaking retirement funds. Like, those are meant for like decades, right? Like, decades from now we'll be fine, right? I'm hoping that I'm helping you with your short-term trading, your short-term investments, anything that you planned on holding for maybe a year, 2 years. Anything longer than that, like, please don't ruin your retirement because of something I'm saying. Like, I'm not a financial advisor. I've never tried to give financial advice for anybody. One day I will be able to do that, and maybe soon. But meantime, don't mess with those. Those are not meant to be touched. There's a reason I have mine with a broker. Like, it makes it so I can't touch it. Because if I was in control of my own, I would go and mess with it because I just can't help it, right? And I don't want to mess with it, so I just let someone else hold it, and then I don't have to worry about messing with it. So if that's you, maybe you should get a professional to manage that for you, so that way you're not tempted to touch it. And I hope that helps. Do you hold any other fiat currencies right now? No, I'm just in the dollar. Regardless of what the dollar chart looks like, I don't plan on monkeying around with other currencies. So would you wait to enter any leverage strategies for longing on the big indexes? Yeah, I would. I took a flyer on a SPY call. I mean, I think it was $300 or $400 in total I got in it, and I'll probably be down 50% tomorrow when it opens, and I'll just get out because I don't, unless of course we bounce overnight, which we might. We'll have to see what happens when we open. But short-term things and long-term things, you got to keep them separate, totally separate categories. You don't touch this stuff over here. Over here, you got to be really risk averse and just try to take what the market gives you. What do you think about TLT now instead of cash? I don't know. Let's look at it. I think that if the market's going to go into a longer-term bear market, I don't know how much anything will be safe, to be honest with you. But we'll take a look. TLT. So when you look at it, I mean, that is in what I call the fear and panic zone. And that is its all-time chart. So I had this curve here a while back and it didn't like it. So I wouldn't touch this unless it broke back above the 786 here at 95.60. and closed a weekly or even maybe a monthly candle back over it. It is still bearish, and I don't buy bearish things, so it'll definitely be something to watch. We have a downtrend here, so I mean we could get a bounce all the way back up to there. And so in order to make a decision on that, like I said, I would need to see at least a weekly candle close above 95.60. So I hope that helps. I mean, even just seeing this chart alone, having its all-time being here, is just not good looking at all. It's not good. Sucks seeing a year's worth of gains gone in a couple days. It absolutely is. I mean, it's astonishing, really. If we just take the 12-month chart here, like, we've erased the entire 2024 candle in essentially the first quarter. I mean, we're past the first quarter mark, but I mean, essentially that's where we are. And you can see that's kind of what 2022 did, but it took the whole year to do that. And now we've done this in just a few short months. The yearly 8 EMA sits at 43.14 currently. So, and we've never closed a candle below the yearly 8 EMA except for in 2008. So again, I keep referring to 2008 because that is the degree of how bad things might get. I don't think it'll get that bad, but you never know. Like, the larger cycles will be harsh, and whenever it gets to like such a low point, people are usually like, "Oh, it can't possibly go any lower," and then it does, and then it happens again, and then it does. So, like, this is potentially what we might be in for. Just know that this can happen. Like, so just be safe. When I find a bottom, I'm gonna go balls to the wall into it, because then I think we have another 18 years to go for another bull market. So that would be where I put in the majority of my funds, would be into the stock market. I would probably forget about crypto. And maybe that's what other people are thinking too, and that's why Bitcoin's not doing what everyone thinks it should do, and that's why Ethereum's not doing what it should do. Perhaps that's the thinking of most. I don't know. If we're into a generational opportunity on this equities dip or bear market, then it makes sense that's where most money would go, right? Into the potential bottom of wherever that might be for the next couple decades. What do you think about buying gold right now? I think gold topped also, and we can look at it, but I sold it at the 1.618. It ended up going higher than that by about 10%, I believe, just like the S&P 500 did. That did not bait me, however. Where is, I know I have it here somewhere. Here, oh, there we go. So just like the S&P, it got up above the 1.618. So right now it wouldn't surprise me if this continued to fall at least back to the 2,800 mark, right? And then we'll have to see if it wants to find support there and become a major hedge against whatever the market's doing. But that's definitely bearishly divergent as well. You can see this wasn't, right? So we made a high, made a higher high. This made a high, and it did make a slightly higher high on the RSI, but now it made a lower high on the RSI. So now we have bearish divergence on gold, and it wouldn't surprise me to see this fall and that be a top as well. Okay, I don't have any good news. I'm sorry. One day I will, though. Promise. All right, guys. Thank you so much. I'll post the recording of this video in the Weekly Outlook channel, and I'll keep you posted throughout the week on what I'm seeing, and maybe we can scalp some profits, huh? All right. Have a good night. Bye.